This is part one of a video series on microeconomics. In this video, you will learn about the basics of demand. It will help you differentiate demand and quantity demanded, identify the determinants of demand, and learn about changes in the demand curve. After watching the video, you should be able to do the following. First, define the basic concepts of demand. Second, analyze changes in demand based on its determinants. And third, differentiate between shift of and movement along the demand curve. The first thing that you need to understand is the difference between demand and quantity demanded. Demand is the entire relationship between price and quantity demanded over a given period. There are two ways to illustrate demand: using a demand schedule and a demand curve. A demand schedule is a table, while a demand curve is a graph. Both show how much of a given product a buyer would be willing to buy at different prices. On the other hand, the quantity demanded is the amount of goods that a consumer would buy at a given price. Each amount on the horizontal axis is the quantity demanded. Notice that as the price increases, the quantity demanded decreases, and as the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases. This explains the law of demand. It is the negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. For instance, if milk tea prices decrease, your willingness to buy more milk tea would generally increase. Several factors affect the demand for a good or a service. These include income, price of related goods, tastes and preferences, expectations, and number of consumers. Before we examine the various determinants of demand, note that price is also a determinant. However, unlike the other determinants of demand, price affects the quantity demanded and not the whole demand. So, how do the other determinants affect demand? First is income. In general, we would expect that households with higher income would buy more goods and services. If this is the case, the goods or services that the household buys are called normal goods. Normal goods are goods for which demand goes up when income is higher and for which demand goes down when income is lower. Do you think the demand for a good will decrease when income increases? If this happens, the good is called an inferior good. Inferior goods are goods for which demand tends to fall when income rises. Let me give you an example of normal and inferior goods. Let's say your parents decided to increase your allowance from 500 pesos to 1,000 pesos a week. Before, with 500 pesos, you prefer to eat your lunch at the university canteen. But when your allowance increased, you decided to eat at Jollibee. The lunch at the canteen is an inferior good, while lunch at Jollibee is a normal good. To recap, inferior goods are goods for which demand decreases when income increases. And normal goods are goods for which demand increases when income increases. Another determinant of demand is the price of related goods. A related good can be a substitute good or a complementary good. Substitute goods are goods that can serve as replacements for one another. This means that when the price of good one increases, the demand for good two increases, and vice versa. When the price of good one decreases, the demand for good two decreases. Examples of substitute goods include tricycle rides and jeepney rides, and restaurant meals and meals at home. A jeepney ride can be a substitute for a tricycle ride. If the price of a tricycle ride increases, the demand for jeepney rides will increase. How about meals at a restaurant? They can serve as a replacement for meals at home. If restaurant meal prices decrease, you may be willing to eat there more often and eat less at home. A related good can also be complements or complementary goods. Complementary goods are goods that go together. A decrease in the price of good one will increase the demand for good two, and vice versa. Examples of complementary goods include car and gasoline, printer and ink, and cell phone charger. Let's take printer and ink as an example. If the price of a printer decreases, you are more willing and able to buy a printer. So your demand for ink will also increase. The third factor that affects demand are people's tastes and preferences. For example, some people prefer to travel, so their demand for domestic and international travel increases. People's expectation is another determinant of demand. For example, when a motorist expects that the price of gasoline will fall next month, his demand for gasoline will therefore decrease today and increase the following month. The demand for goods and services can also be affected by the number of consumers. An increase in the number of consumers leads to an increase in the demand for certain goods and services. For example, during summer, local tourists flock to Baguio City. So the demand for hotel rooms and other goods and services will therefore increase. To recap, the factors that affect demand include income, price of related goods, tastes and preferences, expectations, and the number of consumers. If you can recall, price is also a determinant, but it only affects the quantity demanded and not the whole demand. Given what you have learned about the determinants of demand, let us now examine the changes in the demand curve if there is a change in one of the determinants. Let us learn about the shift of demand and movement along the demand curve. A shift of the demand curve occurs when there is a change in one of the determinants of demand, except price. The demand curve either shifts to the right or to the left. A rightward shift means there is an increase in demand, while a leftward shift means there is a decrease in demand. So what causes a movement along the demand curve? A movement occurs when there is a change in the price of the good or service. For example, for 100 pesos, you are willing to buy 2 units of pad paper. But when the price increases to 150, you are willing and able to buy only 1 unit of pad paper. The change in price causes a movement along the demand curve from point B to point A. And if price decreases from 100 to 50, you can buy 3 units of pad paper. This causes a movement along the demand curve from point B to point C. To sum up, a price change will never shift the demand curve. It will only cause a movement along the demand curve. The changes in the other determinants, such as income, price of related goods, tastes, expectations, and the number of consumers, will shift the demand curve. I hope you learned more about the concept of demand. Before we end, let us have a quick check for understanding. In the following items, identify if you agree or disagree with the statements. You may write your answers in your notebook or on a piece of paper. Did you get all 5 items correct? Congratulations! The correct answers will be discussed in class. Also, if you have any questions about the video, you may ask them during the synchronous session. Don't forget to watch the second part of the video series on microeconomics to learn about supply. A supplementary video material is also available to help enhance your understanding of demand and supply. It will help you learn about demand and supply functions, schedules, and plotting of demand and supply curves.